Hi, everybody. How's it going this morning? Um, Happy to be here for a little half and half class. We had a couple of technical difficulties on the last class, and we think we've worked that out, but I'm just going to do a, you know, warning. What do they say? I'm just getting full disclosure. Hopefully everything runs well for this class, but yeah, I think we've got it going pretty well. Um, so Scott's class. I'm sorry, Scott wrote in the chat. My head's all over the place. Scott wrote in the chat about the four abdominal muscles and how those muscles support, working those muscles support posture, which makes you, have a healthy neck, a healthy spine, healthy back, sort of lower back, all these sorts of things. Hopefully, it helps your hips release. Um, and that seems like a lot for your abdominal muscles to do, right? But the thought is that, sort of this idea of the center of the body and supporting posture and supporting your center of mass um, helps everything else, like it creates a good foundation for everything else to build on, right? So there's an idea of core to distal movement in developmental movement patterns, and the idea that the body always has this patterning back and forth between your core area and then your limbs. And Pilates, for sure, really thinks about that a lot. If we create a strong core, we have more freedom in the limbs. So there's not necessarily a lot of stretching in Pilates. That's not really how it's designed. The design is we're going to make the core stronger. We're going to be really specific in how we use it and use it really efficiently. And that means all those muscles that sometimes tighten the other places, neck, shoulders, hips, can let go and things can move more freely because we've got a really nice foundation. And the abdominals are a big part of that foundation. So, four abdominal muscles. Transverse abdominis, your deepest abdominal muscle. It wraps around from the back of the body towards the front of the body and ends kind of like mid, like kind of a third of the way. They all sort of insert into this tendon here. So the transverse abdominis is a postural support muscle, and it wraps from the back to the front and the side of the waist, right? And what that muscle does in sort of a general way is if you exhale and kind of pull your waist in, that's a transverse abdominis. And we used to use the image a lot as teachers of like trying to put your tight jeans on and you suck in your stomach and you lie on your back. And now jeans all have spandex in them and that image doesn't work as well. But if you remember the 1970s jeans that like were super stiff when they came out of the dryer, or you got them off the line, and how you really like they needed to stretch out, you did have to suck your stomach in. I think that image works. But that feeling of drawing the waist in, it gets smaller on the side. It draws in a little through the back, it draws in a little through the front. Really, really deep transverse abdominis muscle. It holds your pelvis, it holds your lower back, it holds your rib cage, kind of all that area, and gives you a sense of support in your posture. Then we have these two oblique muscles, the internal obliques and the external obliques, and both of those run on diagonals, which is why they're called obliques. And they're a little bit from the side of the body running up and from the side of the body running down. So they're going to help with oblique movement, with twisting. They're also going to be a part of side bending. They're going to be a part of rolling forward. They're going to be a part of stabilizing your spine. They really do everything. And then we have this muscle that more people are aware of, the rectus abdominis muscle, that's kind of your six-pack muscle that goes from your ribs down to your pubic bone. And that muscle mainly is involved in flexing the spine, rounding the spine, and rolling it up and down. So I said these other three muscles kind of wrap around and in this like third of the way area, and the rectus goes through the center, right? It's just kind of like tapes down the front there. And the one we like feel the most sort of the easiest, I think, is the rectus, because it's kind of the most surface. That transverse is pretty hard to feel. It's really deep in. And then the internal obliques are a little harder to distinguish. The external obliques we might feel a little more. Every time we talk about the shoelace and the ribs coming together, that's a lot. It's typically your external obliques that you're feeling in that moment, up in the upper abdominals. But we're just going to take like all that imagery, knowing that the abdominal muscles start from the back, the sides, the upper ribs, down to the pubic bone, down in the pelvis, and that the exhale could get all that to come on. And then we're going to take these movements of the spine so that we get into all those muscles and so that we can get some of this to let go and support from down here instead. So let's give it a try. Come onto your back, knees bent, feet flat. Relax everything first. So one thing we want to do is we don't want to start making a new meal before we clean up the kitchen. That's just a random thing to say, right? But that's the plan. So I don't want to start turning my abdominals on until I've turned off the other muscles. I want to kind of clean up what's going on. So if I tend to use my hips a lot and my neck a lot and my back a lot, I don't want to just add more to that with the abdominals. It's not going to be that useful. It's not going to help me very much. So we're going to start, and we often do, with relaxing, breathing, pretty neutral, supported position lying on your back here. So that just slowly the hip muscles start to let go, the neck muscles start to let go, the back muscles start to let go, the breath starts to move a little more easily. Like this is why I often start with this semi-relaxation practice. So we get the other stuff just kind of cleaned up and cleared out. Get the dishes out of the sink. And there's not much to do here other than just breathe and relax. And sometimes I'll talk about thinking of your pelvis being heavy. And feeling the rib cage and the upper back relaxed on the floor, feeling your head heavy and your jaw relaxed. And then as we start to think about the abdominal muscles coming on, it's really easy to turn the other stuff on at the same time, especially if you think, I'm going to work as hard as I can and I want to really feel it. So we turn it up to like 2 or 3 to start. We start just a little bit so that the other stuff can stay out of it, right? So a little simmer. We get a big boil, everything splatters. I'm in some sort of cooking imagery today, and I just want to stick with it. But just a little, just start it easy, right? We're going to slowly bring it on. So exhale, feel a little bit of work down in the lower abdominal muscles, down inside the pelvis, below the navel, kind of in the pelvis. So as you exhale, letting the belly drop down, letting it spread out, and feeling just a little bit of tone. Let it go. Find it again on the next exhale. And for me, I can feel that relationship of the abdominals come on, my hips actually feel a little more relaxed. And if you feel like my abdominals came on, but my hips actually feel tighter, back off. Don't look for so much sensation. Trust your body to do it. Maybe put your fingers there. Sometimes the muscles are working and you can feel it from your fingers, even if you can't feel it internally. Now let's take a little movement focused on that lower abdominal area. So find that little bit of tone. See if you can keep some of that tone as you inhale, and lift your right leg, knee over hip. Exhale, maybe a little more tone in the belly. So you lower your leg down. Left leg comes up, inhale. Exhale, deeper, wider belly, easy hip muscles, easy thigh muscles, heavy leg, right? Dead weight means all those thigh muscles are letting go as much as you can. Continuing to alternate, inhale a leg up, exhale it down. Sometimes the pelvis will rock side to side. If you can keep your pelvis still by that engaged abdominal feeling or image. If it's not a big feeling for you, you could think of it as an image. One more time. Both feet on the floor, take a moment, let everything relax. A little bit of work in the abdominals. Maybe there's an opportunity for your hips to relax a little more, for your lower back to relax a little more. I actually find my neck already is relaxing a little more. Working way down here, my neck was able to relax a little more, and my head feels heavier. My upper back feels heavier. Now, all this time, we talk about the ribs. Last week, we went back to that shoelace image and pulling the ribs together with that. That's about the upper abdominals. A lot of, like I mentioned, obliques probably is the most likely thing you feel, but you might feel a little bit of the rectus abdominis, drawing the ribs down towards your pubic bone a little bit. You might be getting a little bit of internal obliques coming on that draws your kind of side ribs down towards your pelvis a little more. Doesn't really matter, you don't totally have to know, but definitely abdominals working up here. As you exhale, ribs draw in and together, down towards the mat, down towards your pelvis. Inhale, think of the ribs getting wider. Exhale, tie the shoelace. If you work too hard, as you do that, you're going to feel tightness in your chest and your neck. So if you get that happening, we don't want that, right? We want the neck to release as the abdominals come on. Just back off a little. Or maybe you just pay attention, like, oh, if I relax my chest, I actually can get the ribs to move better. Hands come behind your head, and then we put that into movement, into practice. So elbows are lifted a little. The exhale, ribs down and together, using your support of your hands to bring your head up. Now you stay up and you check in again. Inhale, exhale, ribs in. Relax your chest, relax your neck. Lower your head back down. Exhale, find the ribs, bring the head up. Stay up, do a little refinement. Inhale, exhale, heavy, easy head, easy neck, easy chest. Coming back down. As we're doing this, I'm talking about the ribs, but the lower abdominals actually, the more you come up, the more you'll start to feel some of that work too. So check in with that this time, exhaling. Ribs, head, upper back. As you stay up here, ribs, tone in the lower belly, relax the hips, relax your butt, relax your chest. Coming back down. 2 more on your own. And once you finish that second one, come back to reset in your kind of neutral space. And then same thing. How's your spine feel? How do your hips feel? How's your lower back? How's your neck? Sometimes you get that work and it feels sort of new. And You actually feel a lot of release in these places. Yeah, it's fine to like hang out here if that's where you are and this feels really interesting and you want to hang out here a little longer, you can. I'm going to move on to the next thing, but you always have that option. Sometimes the integrative process is a little slower and you like hang out and breathe, and that feels really useful. And then sometimes you're like, I'm ready to move on. And then we get to move on. So if you're ready to move on, let's come up to sitting. Feet, let's do hip distance apart, knees bent, and heels on the mat here. Now, take your hands, lift your pelvis and slide it a little forward so you're not on your sitting bones. This is not how you want to sit in your daily life. This is a way of sitting that helps work your abdominals, right? You are back behind your sitting bones. Your back kind of behind your tailbone. And this is why you get your hands to help you. And I know sometimes people don't want their hands to help them and they really want to test themselves right away. But the reason the hands can be helpful is it gives me this opportunity to go a little deeper, to check in with my hips, to clean up the kitchen first before I start making something new, right? So if I immediately go to this, my hips are still on, my abdominals might be working, but I haven't gotten my hips to let go. Grab on, hold on, feel it in your arms, feel it in your biceps holding you, so that you have a moment to relax the hips, draw the belly in just like you did when you were lying on your back, draw the ribs in, feel the neck release. Now the tricky thing here, sometimes working the arms makes your chest work. So you just got to go, okay, relax the chest too. I have other muscles, I have biceps, I have triceps. I don't have to work up in my chest. I can work some other spots. Now, next thing is up to you. You could keep hands on your legs. It can be super informative to keep doing this movement, holding on. And you get to keep checking in with the thighs releasing and the deep abdominals coming on. So I'm doing it like that. I'm rolling down about halfway, and that's helping me feel my back release a little more and my hips release a little more. And then I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to pull. Sometimes I think of like a rope climb, which I've never done, but I have some sort of visceral image of. But like you were climbing that rope in a 1950s gym class. And I use my hands like that up my leg, like I'm really pulling myself up. I'm going to do another one with my hands. Walking about halfway down, all that same stuff. Ribs tie in, belly draws in, hips relax, which means my feet stay on the floor. If my feet are coming up, my hips are not relaxed. Easy neck, pulling myself up my legs. Okay, so like I said, super useful to do it that way. Really helpful. Maybe you want to keep continuing that right there. I think it can be really nice. If you're itching to test yourself a little more, start in that same place with the arms. Hold with your arms, find your belly, open your back. One arm reaches forward. Did this tighten? See if you can let it go. Other arm reaches forward. If you've got more hip than belly, rearrange that balance. More belly, less thigh, less hip. Same question as you go down. Can you pause before your hip wants to lift or your leg wants to lift? Keep it in your belly instead. Same exact question as you come up. Do your feet come up? If they do, that's your hips. Use your hands. Yeah, does it make sense? Like kind of getting what your goal is, and then use all your tools to accomplish this goal of belly instead of neck and hips and chest. If you can do it, not holding your legs, that might be interesting. Might be more interesting holding your legs if that's what you need. A couple more times. I'm using the exhale to roll back. I'm inhaling for a moment and I'm using the exhale to come up. This time, take it all the way to the floor. We're going to use it as the transition down onto your back. Same thing as you get lower, you might want to grab on so that you can keep all that control. And then letting the legs just relax here. Everything kind of dropping in again. We'll keep going. Right leg in. Relax the knee, relax the leg. I am gently putting my left leg in parallel, right? Not a ton of work to be there. So my knee is towards the ceiling on the left leg. And then again, gently flexing the foot. So I really feel the heel down and the toes up. And gently means like I'm using like 65% effort, right? I'm not 100% effort pulling that foot way up. So just, you don't have to work that hard to flex your foot. Efficiency, right? Just be efficient in how you do it. Don't put in extra effort there. So we go up and down. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, bend. And follow your breath. Once you get up there, you know all the questions. Find your belly. Relax the right quad, front of the hip, left quad, front of the hip, chest, neck, ribs drawing together. Hands come by your side. Support from the belly means you have a little more ease as you circle the leg. That's the goal. More work in the belly, less work in the hip, less work in the thigh, less work in the neck and the chest. Reversing. One more. Right knee bends, both legs down. Relax both legs, reset it. Left leg comes in, hold the back of the thigh. Efficient effort turns your right leg to parallel. No extra work there. Efficiently flexing the foot. So the heel's down, the toes are up, but not a lot of extra work. We go up and down, inhale, and exhale, bend. And as you go up and down, it's totally normal that as your leg gets straighter, your left thigh feels tighter, front of your hip feels tighter. It's also pretty normal that as your leg goes straighter, your right thigh starts to grab, quad starts to grab, your chest starts to grab. All those things are normal, but also they're retrainable. So a little bit of belly support, a little less hip, a little less thigh, a little less chest. Leg goes up, and then we challenge all that a little more. Ribs together, belly in, hands come away. Inhale across, exhale, belly does it, lessen the hip and the thigh. And when I say belly, I actually mean whole abdominal wall. Ribs together, waist drawing in, low abdominals have some tone. All those muscles I talked about at the beginning. One more. and in reverse. Left leg comes down, take a moment, relax it all down for a moment. Now I feel better, right? My neck feels like way more relaxed. My spine feels a little more open. Even though I haven't done a lot of movement in my spine, it feels more open. My hips feel heavier. All that feels pretty good to me. But let's see what it's like standing. So let's work your way up and take that movement of rolling up to standing. So coming over onto your hands and feet. Little stretch forward here. Now the same things apply. If you stretch your legs farther than is really like you're really capable of, you'll actually feel a kind of a thickness and a denseness in the front of your hip and the front of your thigh. And then your lower back feels kind of dense. That's how I would call it. It feels like full and thick in that space. So you're not really releasing. And if you bend your knees and back off a little bit, a lot of times you can let things soften in the front of the hip. You feel more of a fold of the body down onto the thighs and more release in the lower back. Now, if you have the legs straight and you don't have that feeling, you still feel like you can fold, that's just fine. But most of us, including myself, I get some of that thickness when I straighten my legs. And right now I want to feel that folding feeling. So deep low belly draws in. Arms and head and shoulders and chest and hips all stay relaxed as you roll up through your spine. You find your standing posture. So my feet are straight ahead, toes are pointing forward. Again, if I bend my knees a little, get a big old ankle crack. I don't know if you heard that. That happens. If I bend my knees a little, then I feel like kind of like a brushing, like an ease in the front of the thighs. I get a better sense of the belly work we just did, drawing some tone into the lower abdominals, drawing the ribs together in the front, and feeling my chest kind of relaxed and my back open. I also feel my feet a little more. And so the trick is, and it's a trick for all of us, it's hard to do, is to press the legs towards straight and not lose some of that. A lot of times the ribs go forward or the belly lets go or the chest tightens up or lifts or whatever. So try it a couple times. Bend your knees. See if you can get that feeling of your abdominal support coming on, holding your posture. Hips doing a little less, back doing a little less, feet doing more. And then can you keep some of that feeling as your knees straighten? Straight but not locked. Knees bend. And press towards straight. And we'll do one more. Then the hook comes out and gets me, and I have to leave. So find your nice standing posture. Maybe you want to hang out here a little bit. Maybe you want to like shake it out. Either way is fine. But we'll set up to transition. Let Scott come in and build on this a little bit more.
Hello, everybody. So all this talk of abdominals makes me think of a building, oddly enough, and a very specific building. I think of the John Hancock building in Chicago. Now, that's not what it's named anymore, but do you remember how it has those X's that go all the way up? And those are functional. Those X's are about keeping that building from falling over. And we have the same basic structure in our body. So we see it a lot of times. Human engineering is built on what naturally occurs in nature. And so we spend a lot of time right there working with some of the various muscles. And I'm going to build upon that idea of looking at how the obliques form X's that go all the way around your midsection to help hold that stability. And so rather than talking about it, let's take a few moments here to pick up right where you left off. And slightly lengthening your out breath and deepening your in breath. So right now, all these muscles, there's a symphony going on that goes on under the surface of awareness. So you might be asking, how do I know all that activity is going on? You haven't fallen over. At least I don't think you have. But this is not a lot of work going on in the midsection. So let's challenge this diagonal architecture. First by stepping your feet apart. Then turn your left foot in and your right foot out. And for the time being, your torso is still vertical, isn't it? So maintaining that vertical is you slowly bend your knee, ankle, hip, and knee all bend in concert. And we'll pause here for a bit. So spine in the vertical, in the absence of falling over, your core is working. So now, slowly tip your hips. And now what's keeping you from toppling is an increased engagement in these muscles. So let's bring elbow to knee, hand on your hip. So resting into your elbow. Now those muscles aren't working very much. Now, as Collette mentioned, the abdominal muscles go from spine to belly. They connect pelvis to rib cage to pelvis. And so we're going to challenge those diagonal muscles, internal obliques, external obliques, in your side flank. To do so, not leaning quite so much on your elbow. Planting your left foot, extending out through the crown of your head. So I can feel my elbow against my knee, but I'm not leaning much into it. Let's take a few breaths here. And then with the next inhale, coming up and turning back toward the front. So we're expanding the discussion of core from here to include your side flanks. So let's take a look at the other side. Turn your right foot in, left foot out. Spine's in the vertical. Belly has to work, but not a whole lot. Spine stays in vertical as you slowly bend. And of those four abdominal muscles, we have the diagonal ones, internal obliques and external obliques. And starting to challenge them as you slowly tip your hips. And specifically those obliques, the fibers on your side flank. So let's begin by elbow to knee and lean into your elbow. And get a sense of the alignment. Straight line from heel to head. Now that you have that alignment, slowly lightening, not leaning quite so much on your elbow. I'll take a few breaths here. And then with the next inhale coming up, turning back to the front, and then stepping your feet together. So now let's take a look at a yoga pose where the belly muscles spontaneously engage, whether or not you feel that occurring. So begin with an in-breath. Exhale, arms to the side up. Inhale, folding. Exhale, gorilla. Inhale, stepping back. We're going to take a few breaths here, more than a few breaths actually. So especially if you have a lot of yoga training, we tend to default to knees super straight. And just like Collette was talking about, then there's that heaviness or that density in the fronts of the thighs and the hip flexors. So let your knees bend sufficiently until you feel I think the best word is a hollowness at the fronts of your hips. And then invite that hollowness up toward the ceiling and back behind you. And we'll take a few breaths here. And then coming down to your knees. So then on your knees, remember how you talked about the hip flexors? So see if you can keep those hip flexors offline as you arch your spine up toward the ceiling. So especially when you bring your lower back into flexion, lumbar flexion, that's going to engage your belly muscles. Now, just like you worked on with the roll down, explore engaging your belly muscles and not clenching other muscles. And we'll take a few breaths here. And then coming back to hands and knees. So there is one position right there where simply by being in the position, your belly muscles engage. So whether or not you can see the cat, oh, he's walking out of the frame. Move back to head down dog pose. It's probably best not to do dog pose with a cat around. Then same approach, let your knees softly bend until your hip flexors go offline. And here's another position where whether or not you feel your belly muscles engaging, there's that old expression, engage your core. Actually, you don't really have to do that all that often. Like for example, right here, your core is engaged automatically, even if you don't feel it. We'll take a few more breaths. Feel how naturally your belly draws in toward your spine. And then with the next out breath, step your feet forward, ending up in gorilla position. Then with the inhale, folding. Exhale all the way up. Inhale, arms down. So let's take a little side trip here. Take your left foot, step it back a little bit. Look down, take a peek, make sure both feet point straight ahead. And once you can see that they do, then come back up to standing. And then this technique I like to call the psoas walk. Take your psoas for a walk. So start by lifting your left heel, let that propel you forward, and then exhale, descend that heel down. As you lift your heel and move forward, notice how the front knee softly bends. And as you go back, notice how that front knee straightens. So it's really a whole body movement. Inhale, exhale. So sliding forward and back. Inhale, exhale. One more time like that. Now keeping that back heel lifted, keeping your front knee softly bent. Noticing where your pelvic bowl is. And keep your pelvic bowl and your torso where they are. As you reach your left heel back and down, back and down, back and down to help further release the front of your hip. Maybe even you feel a little bit of a lengthening going on there. And once you feel your back heel down, bring your arms forward. And reach your arms forward. Let your chest relax back behind you a bit. Feel how your shoulder blades naturally wrap around your rib cage. It's like your shoulder blades are hugging your ribs. Then keep that scapular hugging. As you exhale, float your arms up. Let your chin follow along with. And bring your hands down. And step your back foot forward. Drop down. Remember that feeling a little bit earlier? Hip flexors release, thighs, a quality of flowing down. As you press your feet down and let your feet pressing down generate the lift in your belly. Standing at your full height, which for me is 6'6". So now let's take the other foot, step it back. Both feet forward. Once you can see that's the case, then standing up tall. Take your psoas for a walk. Right heel lifts, propels you forward. Descends, draws you back. Inhale forward. Exhale back. Few more. The next time that back heel lifted, pausing there. Noticing how the front knee is softly bent. How your pelvis is a little bit forward and lifted. So see if you can keep your pelvic bowl, abdomen, thorax, neck, and head placed. As you flow your right heel back and down, back and down, back and down to help further release and lengthen hip flexor and thigh. Then once you feel that heel on the floor, bring your arms forward. Now in yoga we often hear about lift your chest, open your chest. So that's true in certain contexts. But in terms of the forthcoming arm movement, we want the shoulder blades to wrap around the side ribs. So especially if you have a lot of yoga training, let your chest relax toward your spine. Let your shoulder blades naturally come around the side of your rib cage. And that's where they belong as you take your arms up. And bring your arms down. And stepping forward. So not too much about the abdominals there, was there? Which is correct observation. But that was really to introduce an idea not only how to create more release in the fronts of your hips and in your thighs, but what to do with the shoulders when you take your arms overhead. So let's reinforce that idea. Bring your arms forward. This is Collette and I produce the other section, so Collette has to scramble because she knows I'm going to take my arms overhead and go out of screen. So let your chest relax back. And then before we take the arms overhead, when you let your chest relax toward your spine, what, if anything, does that feel like emotionally? It's not uncommon during stressful times that relaxation, let your chest relax toward the spine, can cultivate a feeling of ease in the body and the mind. So shoulder blades continue wrapping around your side ribs as you flow your arms up. This time let's keep your head where it is, not necessarily looking up. Let those shoulder blades not only wrap around your side ribs, but relax up toward your ears. There we go. Full deep inhale. Exhale, arms down. Now let's set aside the breathing techniques. We'll take a moment here to rest your body and mind. So now we have the pieces in place. We're to work with those diagonal fibers, the obliques internal and external, and specifically the obliques that are in your side flanks. So to begin, take your feet wide apart. Turn your left foot in, right foot out. Some of you probably already know we're heading with this, so keep it to yourself. Next, exhale, bending your knee. Expand your ribs with this inhale. Exhale, tip your hips. And this time, rather than the interlude of resting your elbow, graze your elbow. Just barely contacting. Then align your torso. All right, so this is challenging your obliques in your left side. Now to further challenge those obliques, now take your right arm and outstretch it. Deep breathing here. And ride the next inhale up. And turning back toward the front. Turn the right foot in, left foot out. Fill your ribs with the inhale. Articulate your ribs. Get them moving. Then flow with the out breath. Bend your knee. Now, especially your back ribs between your shoulder blades. Use the inhale to open there. And exhale, tip your hips. Now, progressively, the more you tip, the more these obliques have to work. Take your left elbow out to the pasture and graze it. Right up against that knee. Sorry, bad joke, couldn't resist. All righty, so now let's challenge these obliques even more by taking your left arm and outstretching it. Ride the inhale up, turning back to the front, and then stepping your feet together. So front of your hips release into lengthening, quadriceps flow down. At the same time, your pelvic crests slightly lift up, slightly. That's really, easy to overdo. I think I'm about 6'7" now. By that downward flow of thighs, coexistent with that upward lift pelvic crest. So before we were practicing the shoulder blade positioning when your arms are up overhead, which is very different when your arms are below your shoulders. Bring your left shoulder blade against your back, your right shoulder blade against your back, and let your shoulder blades lift your chest. Let your shoulder blades support your chest. Now, for almost all of us, if we stayed here for any length of time, mind would probably start to get agitated. So do you feel how your heart is pushing forward? Imagine your beating heart was now free to relax toward your spine. So this is more in the realm of subtle energy. So shoulder blades against your back to help lift your chest. At the same time, let your heart relax into the back of your body. And steady breathing. All right, so let's make our way to the floor. Begin with an inhale. Remember how we use the in-breath to open upper back. And exhale, arms up. So now arms go up overhead. Notice how the shoulder blades naturally elevate and wrap around. And then as we inhale, fold, as the arms come down, shoulder blades naturally retract. Exhale, gorilla. Inhale, stepping back. We'll take a few breaths here. So especially when you can feel the fronts of your hips release here in head down dog, naturally the belly tends to lengthen. Naturally belly tends to move toward the back of the body. Naturally abdominal muscles tend to engage. And a couple more breaths here. And then come on down to your knees. And then onto your left side. So on your left side, set your elbow, shoulder, and hip on the back side of your mat. And have your two legs, your 2 feet toward the front edge of your mat. Then rest your head on your arm. And as you keep your head resting onto your arm, take your lower leg and press it down to the floor. And use that pressing down to lift your upper leg up. And now that that upper leg is lifted, then pointing the foot, plantar flexion. And then see if you can keep your torso steady as you slowly bring your foot a little forward. As you slowly bring your foot a little bit back. And now to add in the breathing. Inhale forward. Exhale back. So it's okay if you feel some weight in your head. Inhale forward. Exhale back. So working a lot of the abdominal muscles. Whether or not you feel them. But don't take my word for it. You know what your evidence would be that your abdominal muscles are working? It's that you're keeping hip stacked on top of hip. Now, sometimes people say, oh, I don't think it's my core keeping hip over hip. This hand's doing all this work. I can't be working my core. Well, I invite you to consider you're moving your leg. And you feel something in your arm and hand. What transmits that force from lower body to upper body? It's the core, isn't it? So let's do one more forward back. And ending up leg on top of leg. And then lowering that leg down. And flipping over to the other side. So kind of like human pancakes here. So we flip the pancake. So we have elbow, shoulder, hip toward the back of your mat. Feet toward the front of your mat. And then my head position is admittedly kind of funny here. It's because I have this microphone. So rest your head on your arm in a comfortable way. Then take your lower leg, press it down to lift your upper leg up. Plantar flex that foot. And let's start with little movements. See if you can keep left hip stacked atop right hip. As you go forward and back, notice how the weight in that hand changes. So that becomes some of your evidence that you're working your core. Now to come all the way back full circle, how we began the session. For many people, what they associate engage the core has a lot of unintended consequences, including tensing muscles that lead to more neck pain, tensing muscles that lead to more back pain. So let's do a few more movements here. And enjoying how your core muscles naturally engage, and sometimes in a more subtle way than what we're used to. Let's do one more front back. leg on top of leg, lowering leg down, and then rolling onto your back. So way back, remember those roll ups, roll downs? Talked about releasing your hip flexors. In dog pose, I introduced a term I like a lot, keep that area hollow. So whichever imagery, words work for you, use your belly to press your lower back to the floor. Use your belly to create posterior pelvic tilt and maintain that posterior pelvic tilt as you lift your hips up, 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 up. So here's a position that has a lot of potential to create even more openness in the fronts of your hips and to create even more lengthening in your thighs. And we'll take a few more deeper breaths here. And then see if you can articulate your spine. Explore the possibility of feeling segment by segment, vertebra by vertebra, lowering down. And then letting go of any of the alignment or effort. Let go of the breathing technique. And we'll spend a few more moments here. And then coming up to sitting. All right, I don't know about you, but that sure went quickly. So any comments or questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. The only caveat is that we have a long lag time with YouTube. So any comments, questions showing up? Looks like nothing thus far. So we have some really fun events coming up. We have a subscriber service through our Pilates on Harrison. And I know a lot of you are already subscribers. And we have some really fun subscriber benefit programs coming up. One is going to be, I think, in 2 weeks on a Saturday. And Collette and I are going to be talking about how meditation supports movement and movement supports meditation. What was that? You don't have to be a subscriber to do that. Oh, you don't have to be a subscriber for that. So very cool. You'd think I'd know these programs, but so that's open for all of us. That's so cool. And then for subscribers and members of the mindful cardio community, I'll be doing a special event on Tuesday, taking a look at mat time. What would be a 20-minute routine to get the maximum bang for the buck in a relatively short period of time? So if you haven't already, please take a look at our website. Lots of different programs, offerings, weekly classes, and so forth. Really glad you could join us today, and let's do this again really soon. Bye-bye.